I'm Stephanie, by the way.
Okay. How are you?
Two people.
Oh, I see.
Nice to meet you.
What's your name? CJ Bridge now. That's the Maryland Property Natural Resources. Oh,
We're going to give you a microphone.
very good. All right. That's right. I saw your photo. Your photo was up on our website. Great that you work for a very dynamic individual. Very good. This is a human too. All I needed is.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's under development now. There might even be a draft out.
Okay.
Yeah, you're in that wonderful organization.
Okay.
Only because you guys are starters. There you know you go shoot forward over time.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Did the food kick in already? Is that what's going on? I told him we should have Krispy Kremes and coffee in there, but we all jacked up. But thank you guys for coming. This is an exciting session that we have for you this afternoon. How many people remember the movie Jerry Maguire? Remember Jerry Maguire? Everybody remember that? Show me the money. Remember that catchphrase? So I always think about that in relationship to when I'm thinking about the impacts that are happening inside of community color and low-income communities. You know, it's so important for us to deal with the environmental impacts that are happening. But when you holistically look at the things that are going on inside the communities, there are a number of different components that are necessary for us to get communities to a healthy state. And one of those is actually the resources and tools that are necessary to make sure that communities have things that are viable, that will help them to be able to move forward. Does that make sense? And we have a panel of some fantastic individuals. And one of the things I really like about this conference, I do conferences all over the country, is that this is sort of a homegrown conference, if you will. You have individuals who are on this panel who are going to share with you real life examples that are happening day to day in our area. Does everybody feel that that's important? Because if somebody tells you about, let's say, a best practice or a case study that maybe is happening in Seattle, that's fantastic, and we're glad to hear that they're being able to make progress. But it's great when you can hear from folks right here on the ground who are making a change. So, I'm real quickly going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to have our first panelist come forward. So, we have Mr. Dennis Chestnut from the Groundworks Anacostia. Would you guys give him a round of applause? We have Ms. Ann Carroll from OSPR at US EPA. We have Mr. Matthew Hendy from Green Heron Information Services. We have Kelly Bollinger who is the Executive Director of the Earth Conservation Corps. And then last but not least, we have Adam Ortiz, who is with the Environmental Resource Director for Prince George's County Health Department. Hello, come on in. Come on in. Join us, sir. So our first speaker is Mr. Dennis Chestnut. Dennis is the Executive Director of Groundworks Anacostia. Dennis is a lifelong Ward 7 resident and grew up a short walk from the Watts Branch tributary, the longest tributary off the Anacostia River. Dennis has been at the forefront of environmental stewardship and sustainability in east of the river communities and the district. His forward thinking has positioned Groundwork Anacostia River DC to take advantage of local and federal efforts to support green jobs, smart growth, and energy efficiency. With over 30 years of experience in the nonprofit industry as the ED of the Eastern Branch Strivers Track and Field Club, and I did not know that, and I ran track at college also. The program director at Washington Parks and People chairman of the Watts Branch Community Alliance, and founding member of the Ward 7 Nonprofit Network. Mr. Chestnut understands that nonprofits have a tremendously important and invaluable role of society. Let's give Mr. Chestnut a round of applause.
Okay, well, and good afternoon, everyone. Since you've had that lunch, I'll definitely try to make sure that I don't put you to sleep, because I know that, after having lunch, that's something you have to fight against anyway. But I'm glad to be able to speak to you this afternoon about something that's near and dear to me. First, I'll just give you just a little oversight of Groundwork Anacostia. We're a nonprofit, as you heard, in Washington, D.C., based in the far northeast section of Ward 7. The focus target of most of our work takes place in the vicinity of the Anacostia River, primarily focused in Ward 7 and 8 east of the Anacostia River. And then we also have a reach into now Wards 5 and Ward 6, which are on the western side of the river. And we focus on those communities and those areas primarily because we feel that the health of the Anacostia River will never be restored if there's not a focus on the areas that border the Anacostia River and that human capital, especially in those areas. Groundwork is an organization that's part of the national network of organizations. There are 20 groundwork programs throughout the United States. Actually, Groundwork is a program and initiative that started out of the Environmental Protection Agency back in the 90s. And now there are 20 of these groundwork programs, and we're proud to be one of those. As it was stated, the kind of work that we do is we focus on, we try to pride ourselves. I like something that we were referred to one time by someone. They referred to Groundwork as a do tank rather than a think tank. And I like that because we do pride ourselves on doing tangible, on the ground work, project work, directly with people. to improve their quality of life in various ways. And since today we're talking about green jobs, this is one of the areas that we have a heavy emphasis on. Just to give you a little bit of insight into some of the kind of work that we're involved in, we manage 3 litter traps that are located in tributaries in Washington, D.C. When I say we manage them, we capture this trash, floatable trash, before it goes into the Anacostia River, and we remove it, collect data on it, and separate what's recyclable from the other stuff, and send it on away. Last year, for example, in our largest trap, we captured somewhere in the area of a little less than 10,000 pounds of floatable trash and debris out of just that one litter trap. We also manage some local community gardens, and this is our brownfields program. We take vacant derelict land and we transform it into some kind of community asset, and the community decides what they want, and these have pretty much been gardens, and we're really proud to work with these neighborhoods and communities to do that, even though we're not an agricultural kind of based organization. And one of the things we're very proud of that we're in the process of doing is we're developing a central park in a community that's right in the heart of a major development area where it's a mixed-use development taking place, 15 acres of land there, and it's a 1 acre central area that can't be built on, and we're working with the developer to turn it into a central park. Now, all of this, I'm saying all this to say, as it relates to green jobs, our approach to green jobs is this. First of all, this is one of the this is the fastest growing and largest emerging area of focus in the world. Conservation and green job development, so-called green jobs, and I say so-called. And it's even larger than the advent of information technology, computers. And I'll say that because this is something that it has to go on going forward. Our approach to the kind of work that we do is by developing the projects, engaging and empowering the local communities and residents where these projects take place, empowers these residents to become stewards of their own communities and get involved directly in the actual work that is going to be taking place and is going on. And what this does is this gives us the ability to, number one, skill up the residents in areas that are non-traditional to them, and to skill these residents up in short periods of time, and at the same time engage them in the process of understanding and forming about what it is all about. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to build that skill base, introduce the group to that area, and develop this green job component at the same time. So, I'll be able to answer some questions later when we get into that portion, but that's Groundwork's approach to green job development.
So we're going to have the opportunity for folks to ask questions, but I'm going to allow one burning question for each one of our panelists, and then we'll come back around to a larger opportunity. So anyone have one burning question for Mr. Chen? Yes.
Is there a youth component? How engaged are you?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We do have a youth component. That was our youth leadership development component. And we presently have a program called our Green Team program that is presently located in 4 high schools, 4 middle schools, and 8 elementary schools. And we do have a young adult component of it as well. That is our watershed protection team. But the high schoolers are tasked at a point of their skill development to work with the lower level schools to introduce them to the same concepts that they learned in high school level. And we put a heavy emphasis on service learning as one of those aspects. So we don't just have an additional class for them to take. We basically connect them to both hands-on work, but also active recreation. We introduce them to active recreation to get them outdoors.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question? Fantastic. So we're going to move forward now to Ann Carroll.
Yes.
Ann-
Just heard base response.
There you go. Ann's got her own theme music that comes with her, which is always a good thing. Ann is with the U.S. EP Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization. She has over 25 years of experience on environmental health protection, including lead poisoning prevention and contaminated site cleanup. Employers include the U.S. EPA, the former Office of Technology Assessment with the U.S. Congress, the National Governors Association, and the New South Wales Environmental Protection Authority. Ann has a BS in biology and MPH in environmental health and pursuing a doctorate in environmental health sciences at Johns Hopkins University. The Bloomberg School of Public Health, including 2 years as a fellow of the Center for a Livable Future. Ann.
Thank you for having me, and my fellow panelists, and thank you all for attending. And we were asked to, respond to a couple of framing questions, and then we really want to talk with you all. So I'll be brief. And does anybody here not know what a brownfield is? Okay. All right. So, it's always brave to put your hand up. So let me just make sure we're all on the same page. A brownfield is a site that is thought to be contaminated or is contaminated. So it's real or perceived contamination. And that's really important because if something is, people are afraid it's contaminated, they're not going to want to go near it, nobody's going to want to buy it or invest it or turn it into something that's healthier. Kind of like some of the community gardens that they've been developing. And so what we do is we give grants to community organizations, well, not community organizations, mostly local government, because maybe they got that abandoned property by tax foreclosure or bankruptcy. And so they can assess and clean those properties and turn them into something that's better for the environment and healthier for the community. The key point is what we've discovered from looking at our sites nationwide, not all of them are contaminated. And that's good news. Some of them are, but if they're not contaminated, that means right away the community can be involved in turning them into something that they want, that's healthier for them. And the other thing that we've discovered, because the program started as sort of a pilot program in the 1990s, the middle of the 1990s, we gave our first grant to Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, Ohio, for them to look at some of the vacant parcels, areas that had older lead paint housing that was deteriorating. But the thing all of us in our communities have that's a brownfield that we might not think of as a brownfield is an abandoned gas station. And so every community has one. They're often right on, sometimes we even have corridors of them. And so the key is, maybe you don't have a park, but turning that gas station into the park that the community can use, or the garden, or maybe it needs to be some kind of place where you can buy food, whether a farmer's market or a little sandwich shop that people can get something healthy to eat in an area that, because unfortunately many of our communities, they're actually getting their food in the mini market because there isn't a supermarket. They're in a food desert. So for us, it's don't be afraid of the contaminated property. You don't have to be an environmental expert because we're out there and we're there to help you. What you have to have is the vision. What you have to do is involve the community. And you really have to prod and poke your local government for them to apply for the resources, to assess it and clean it up and involve the community in the planning for the redevelopment. So we have some examples. I think the key one I really want to bring to you, because it's been an area of a lot of interest, is the community garden piece. Because as you might imagine, the EPA folks who, and in our office particularly, who were talking and thinking about contamination all the time, are like, okay, well, before you take over that vacant lot that used to be by that industry that used to be there and emitted who knows what 50 years ago, can we just get you our resources or our technical experts for you to test it, to make sure it's safe before you turn it into a community garden? And so that's been something that I've really been leading for our national office since 2008. Makes perfect sense. A community wants to take over a vacant lot. But we used a lot of lead paint, we used a lot of lead gasoline, we used a lot of things that we know better now. let's just not, by trying to do a good thing, actually encourage exposure to people about something that they didn't even realize was there. And so that's where, you know, if there's a community garden movement in your community, have people think about, look at the history of that property, ask for help, get your city or local government to apply for resources, because we, you know, award about $70 million of grants competitively every year. And if you don't get it your first year, you're probably going to get it the next year. And so it's never too early to be thinking about touching base with the experts, getting the resources to turn your community into what the community vision wants it to be. And I probably should stop there. But there's a couple of reports I really want to bring your attention to, particularly those of you who are students who are really interested in the green economy part. We give job training grants to community colleges and nonprofit workforce development groups. But the Brookings Institution had a 2010 report about the green economy. It's called Sizing the Green Economy. And it turns out the green economy outperformed the market during the recession. And this report really lays out where are the hotbeds of the green economy, but also all the areas that we could be improving in. For example, we just got these. We should be using these. All right, so who is the Maryland company that is taking these and turning them into these? And if there isn't one, there you go. Those of you who are brave enough to be the entrepreneurs of the future, you know, so it's as simple as, you know, that I work with a government program that does these cleanup things, but it's our consumer decisions. You know, not the low bid, how about the local bid? Whether it's our plumber or our rent or what we buy for Christmas or going to the farmer's market. You know, there's things that we can be doing all the time that can be localizing and strengthening our own community and creating the green jobs that we want to have. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ann. That's one burning question. Yes, let's give her a round of applause. That's that one burning question. Okay, we'll go here and I'll come back to you next time. Go ahead.
Question, with the community garden,
Right.
and you're testing the soil
Right.
before building the community garden.
Right.
How deep do you go with checking the soil for any contaminants?
Well, it depends on what you're going to plant.
Okay. So,
You know, I mean, so all the things that I have in my garden don't really have root zones that go below 18 inches.
okay.
But if I was putting in a community orchard, well, you need a different, you know,
Right.
so it's like, and it's practical. Luckily, there isn't a whole lot of uptake of most things, because luckily plants aren't stupid. You know, and if it goes in, it only goes into the root. It might not go into the fruit or the shoot. And so but you know, don't put beets or carrots because they're a, you know, underground crop. And so, you know, but there's things that both the Soil Extension Service, University of Maryland, has great folks that can help you on the soil and plant science piece. And then it's really like there's the, you know, people that unfortunately think about toxics all the time, and my compadres. And then there's, you know, you really need the USDA and the plant and soil extension folks to do the plant science and soil science. But it's solvable.
Okay. We'll come back. So make sure that you're writing down your questions so we don't lose those questions as we move to our larger session. But now we actually have someone who's launched their own green business recently. Mr. Matthew Von Hendy is the owner of the recently launched Green Herring Information Services, a research business that provides services for green entrepreneurs and businesses, environmental nonprofit organizations, and community activists. Von Hendy is an accomplished librarian with close to 20 years professional experience in science and technical libraries. He has worked at the National Academy of Sciences, the US EPA, NASA, and Strayer University. He holds an MLS degree from the University of Kentucky and an MA degree in history from the University of New Hampshire. Von Hendy is active in many professional organizations such as SLA and AIIP, which you will have to inform us what those mean, and frequently speaks at local and national conferences. Can we give him a round of applause?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm glad to see so many faces here at the conference, and I'm glad to be part of the panel here. And it's always very interesting and exciting to hear what people are working on. Many of the people have talked really about kind of the community level and even the nonprofit level. I'm really dealing with individuals and with what they're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to speak a little bit about how this relates to green jobs and green startups, because at the bottom of environmental justice is really economic justice, economic sustainability, because you want to have people in the communities be able to develop and grow their businesses, have good jobs, so they can stay there and help improve the overall fabric of the community as well as the fabric of the environment. As was noted, let me just mention about my introductory biography there. I've been involved with libraries for 20 years at this point. The SLA is the Special Library Association, and there's actually an association of librarians who have gone into business for themselves. And I've thought about doing this for about probably the last 2 or 3 years, because I really want to work with individuals as opposed to be sitting in, quite frankly, boring meetings. But the fact that I'm doing this is probably everyone, when I talk to them about starting your own business, they all think, oh my God, I can't do that. And that's where I was a couple of years ago. I've got a lot of encouragement along the way. But part of what I really want to work with individuals and groups that are close to my heart, and that is folks that we're working on towards a green economy, environmental justice. And the way I view my mission is to connect people to the information that they're seeking to make them successful. Because there's a direct correlation between environmental justice and information literacy and environmental literacy. And so I'm going to talk just a few examples of how I want to some real life examples of how I've helped people. A lot of folks don't know that they can actually find in time environmental information about their own communities. As long as you have an internet access that's a decent speed rate, the EPA puts out all types of information that's out there about your water quality, about your air quality, about the toxics that are in your community, about the facilities that are actually have permits to put pollutants out into the environment and what levels those occur. So that everyone should be aware of that and available. And that's certainly something that I try to teach people about as I'm working with them. For green entrepreneurs, people that have ideas, a lot of folks have excellent ideas, but they don't know where to turn. So a lot of what I do is wind up connecting people to their local organizations. There are a number of places here in the DC area that are excellent sources of information about green businesses. If you haven't checked out the Green Business Network, that is directly tied into the DC Green Festival that's held each year. I think it's usually in the spring. The people there are nationally connected, and they really know a lot about what's happening there, so they can be an excellent source of information. There are also places such as SCORE, your local Chamber of Commerce, the local Economic Development Office. I'm over in Montgomery County. I know they've got a very active group there. I believe over at Prince George's County as well. So they're all people that will help you if you've got an idea about that you may be thinking about as a startup. And then obviously for startups, there's always the question about your business plan. You know, how are you going to grow your business? What's the marketing demographics? And this is all the basic type of information that's actually publicly available that you can find. You may need some help to find that information, and that's one of the things that I wind up facilitating with the work that I do. As I've started my business, one of the things that I've been really struck by is when I've talked to a lot of local citizens groups, and also even some environmental nonprofits, they are not aware of the amount and high quality of science and technical information that is freely available to you. You need to know where to look to find it, but you can actually find a lot of the research. I was just in a session this morning that they were talking about sustainable fisheries, about people fishing along the Anacostia. And there's actually a lot of information that's out there about the effects of the toxins in the fish, but people aren't aware that's there. So there's also a direct correlation. When we're talking about a lot of these communities, it's not only the connection between, we talked about green jobs, but we have to talk about education as well. People have to have some degree of literacy, and they need to have a decent education. This is all tied together. It's one of the messages that I have. So I've talked about a little bit about the funding opportunities, about the information sources that are out there. We had some framing questions that we're supposed to look at. And one of the things was about issues that are facing these communities, or potential barriers or challenges to creating green jobs. And I've touched on a couple of those. I would say it's education, also money. Money is a huge issue about financing. Like if you're starting a business, you may have the great idea, but you need someone, if you don't have a lot of money in hand, you need someone who's able to supply the capital that you need to get started. And so in terms of connecting people also with financial institutions, places of funding, those are available as well to green entrepreneurs. And I'd like to say a little bit about green jobs. Green jobs is a term that's tossed around a lot. There's not really a clear definition of what green jobs entails. And a lot of folks get hung up on what exactly is a green job and what isn't. And I would say that I have a very broad, expansive view of green jobs. There's some discussion in the RAND report where you mentioned that green jobs are really kind of some traditional jobs, such as wastewater treatment plants, recycling, but also you're talking about new businesses that are going to be out there. There's some things that are just going to get worse. The effects of climate change. If you can think about how those are going to affect your community and what the needs are going to be, we already see this. Sea level rise is going to be affecting these communities right now, 10 years down the pike, 20 years down the pike. If you can see ahead to those issues, those are only going to become more paramount, and you're going to see more and more interest in those particular types of challenges. So that's a real opportunity right now for all types of green entrepreneurs. And I think that's just about everything I had to say. I don't know if anyone's got any more questions.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions as we move forward. Does anybody have one burning question for Matthew? He did such a fantastic job. You know, I got a question. Okay. Yes, sir.
I like this. In terms of your business that you run, do you charge a flat consultation fee to individuals, or how do you?
Well, actually, what I do is I offer free training sessions for both individuals and groups, talking about how to access the information that's what we call open access or publicly available. And kind of beyond that, I would either charge an hourly rate or a flat fee depending what people are working with or what their needs are.
Sliding scale or something.
Yeah, and it depends a little bit. Obviously, with some nonprofit organizations that budgets are always an issue, and I always try to work with those groups as much as I can. Does that kind of answer your question?
Is it you making a living? You making a decent living?
Well, I'll put it this way. My wife is in the audience.
Okay.
And I couldn't have started this with.
She's smiling? Okay.
Green on.
So I'll say this to all entrepreneurs. The best thing to do is to talk to people who have already started, who are already in business and have stayed in business successfully. And they'll tell you some really good lessons. And one of the fundamental lessons that you'll hear about is that you have to have enough living expenses for at least 6 months out. And you should, basically, if you break even your first year, you're doing well. And that's really kind of snowballs. A lot of it 90% of what you're doing the first year is marketing. And that's part of what the business plan is.
Thank you.
And I think as we move forward, one of the things that's really important is that folks think about being innovative. Especially I see a number of younger folks who are in the room, and you guys, of course, are the future, and you guys have a number of fantastic ideas. So you may hear some examples from our panelists of things that they've been able to accomplish so far, and then the charge to you is how do you take it to the next level? What are the new components to it that you can bring to the process that, one, helps other people to be able to address their issues, but